And we're going to get started. Happy New Year 2021. Hopefully it's a little bit, let's say less whatever that was, that last year that we had. Welcome to What Keeps You Up at Night, Entrepreneurship During Challenging Times. I am Colin Weston, one of your three co-hosts, and I am the community leader for Startup Vancouver, which is one of 40 chapters of Startup Canada across this country of ours. And with Startup Canada, we are the voice of the 3.5 million entrepreneurs that we have in the country to support you, connect you to each other, to events, to resources, to make your chance of entrepreneurial success better. That's what we do, and that's why we do it. So on today's show, this is going to be a great one to open with. A couple of old friends. And we also have a new friend here also that are heavily involved in the entrepreneurship space. Very diverse stories that they're going to be sharing with our awesome and curious co-host here, who I want to introduce and say hi to see how they're doing. I haven't talked to them in a month. I miss them dearly. So I'll start with Maryam. Good to see you again. And you're looking fantastic in that new, as you put it, your 2021 look there. So why don't you show that off for everybody?
Thank you so much. I really miss you guys too. And it's good to be back and hoping for lots of love and peace in the 2021.
Absolutely. Hope so too. Reza V, my friend, you got that studio set up now. You've actually transformed yourself or gone to that next level. So how you doing, buddy? How are things going?
Doing well. Happy New Year, everyone. And yeah, it's been, I've missed you guys. It's been a crazy last few weeks because during Christmas time and holiday, I got only 2 days off and things are going in the right direction for us, knock on wood. It's a good types of problems to have as an entrepreneur. And yeah, I'm trying to scale as fast as the demand is coming our way. And it's challenging. I'm going to tell you, it's hard to go from a one-man show to a team and delegate and train. It's quite a enjoyable ride, I would say.
Nice. Well, your experience, that entrepreneurial, I don't know, dilemma is not the right word, but careful what you ask for. You just might get it. You're starting to scale. You're getting some traction. It's like,
exactly.
Oh, careful what you ask for. You just might get it, my friend.
Exactly.
In a sense, like, so you took 2 days off. What kind of entrepreneur are you? You sound like a slacker. When we talked to Jessica today,
I know, slacker.
She's going to be celebrating. She's been podcasting about entrepreneurship for a year, I believe, over 80 episodes, maybe even 100 episodes, but I'll save that. She'll share that. She makes me look like an absolute slacker, the energy she has, and she's got her finger to the pulse of entrepreneurship, not only in Vancouver, the Lower Mainland, but across the country and beyond. So really looking forward to hearing her story. So hey, going to quickly share the screen here. First time of the year. Hopefully I don't get this wrong. Hopefully I do okay here as I try to find the document that we have here. All right, so there we go. So to open up. So in today's show, like I said, three amazing, diverse people that are not only entrepreneurs, but also influencers in the Canadian entrepreneurship and innovation landscape. And I'll be introducing them in a minute with Mary, Rick, and Jessica. And as we always do, we have a little segment we start with very quickly called How Are You Hanging In There? 2021 edition. So, hey, you know what? I've already talked to Maryam. I've already talked to Reza and kind of shared a little bit there. So I'm going to we're going to bounce around here so we keep it spontaneous. I'm going to ask Mary to jump in here for a second. So Mary, how have you been hanging in there over the last, let's say even the last couple of weeks over Christmas before we get into the big conversation? How are you doing there in beautiful Belleville, Ontario?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. I guess glued to the television, glued to the news, like everybody else, but feeling hopeful.
Hopeful is a good feeling to have as entrepreneurs. We have to maintain that sense of optimism. Absolutely. Otherwise we would have given up a long time ago. So thanks for that. I'm going to hold off on our other guests there so they can share the way that they're feeling and how they're hanging in here during the conversations we have. So just wanted to mention to start off with Startup Vancouver. If you want to connect with us, the best way to do that is through social media. We're very active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also our LinkedIn community page there also. We're getting our website up and running here too. So all the events are there too. And also with our YouTube channel, which is getting more and more traction. You can even see there in the lower left there, we had over 1,000 views of our last show of the year. I like to think that it was because I was dressed up as Buddy the Elf with a bunch of lights wrapped around my body there. But I think it was because of the once again, the kind of the quality and the energy of the conversations we're having. But Rick knows better than anybody with entrepreneurship. A lot of it isn't glamorous and sexy. You just have to be consistent, and you've got to sustain what you're doing to just keep putting yourself out there and just being consistent with that messaging. And we're starting to get some traction there, which is super exciting as we head into 2021.
It takes a long time to get glamorous and sexy.
It does. And hey, you're blazing the trail on that one, buddy. You and your background, you've got that nailed. I'm just you lead the way, and I just try to keep up. Just try to keep up. So on our show, we want this to be an interactive and engaging hour of conversation. So after we speak with our guests, we open it up to our attendees on Zoom here and also on Facebook, where we also are. So if you've got any questions, put it in chat, put it in messaging, put it in comments there. We will be more than happy to ask your questions, because that's what we do here. Want to mention quickly that we are again honored to have as our charity partner Jack.org. And Jack.org is a Canadian nonprofit that focuses their energy on being ambassadors and advocates for youth mental health awareness across the country. And they do that by empowering young people to be those spokespeople in schools and in our society. And we're just really happy that, again, that we're going to take this to the next level in 2021. We've raised over $700 through donations. Thank you everyone that's donated in 2020. We do have a couple of donations too from last show that came in at the last minute, so I wasn't able to do a shout out there, and also one today. So whether you like it or not, I will be doing a little musical shout out at the end of the show today. So brace yourself for that. So on today's show, I'm going to finish up at the end of the show. The last conversation will be myself and Rick Spence. Rick has worked decades worth of work and thought leadership in the entrepreneurship and innovation space. He was a columnist and writer for the National Post for over 12 years. Once again, providing those insights in entrepreneurship. So I'm really looking forward to my conversation with Rick. He's also the host of the Startup Canada podcast, which they were so desperate for guests, I guess, a little while ago, Rick, that you even had me on there. So thank you for that. So I know there's even more compelling people that you have on there. So I want you to talk a little bit about that.
Not sure there are. Don't worry about it.
As we go. And we have another podcaster. We got four to six people here today that actually do the podcast thing. So Jessica Coulthard is doing amazing things in the space. I'll let Reza tell that story and ask those questions, so I don't want to be too much of a spoiler on that. But now to open the show with my good friend Mary Doyle and also my good friend Maryam Mobini. The two of them are going to have a conversation. I've met Mary a couple of years ago through the work of Startup Canada, where she was the community leader for Startup Bay of Quinte in Belleville, Ontario, and the amazing work she's doing with her organization, Rural on Purpose. So I'm going to stop right there, stop sharing the screen, and now I'm going to hand it over to Maryam to have a conversation.
I'm going to make a
Maryam.
quick comment before we start. I love how Colin set it up as if it's a boxing match between the interviewer and an interviewee. And we're ready to jump into the ring. I absolutely love it.
Did that sound aggressive? I thought that was, hopefully that was a positive thing.
Maryam, watch out for Mary's left.
That's right.
Rick, you haven't seen my left.
Oh my God. Mary, it's wonderful to have you here. And I just, before we start, because we're going to be talking about health and well-being and, prosperity, I just want to mention how important it is for entrepreneurs to remember, rest is crucial. And we were talking Reza earlier about you. And actually, I took some time during the holiday and I did a at home Vipassana retreat. And I thought it was really, it was definitely something that was much needed. So just wanted to, since we're going to be talking about Maslow hierarchy of needs and self-actualization and the work that you're doing. So I'm just going to, I'm throwing a lot of ideas out there, but I would like to have you introduce your company and the work that you've been doing, and why, especially now, the work that you're doing is so crucial. And if you could elaborate on that, would be great.
Thank you for that. And I'm really interested in learning more. We'll have to talk afterwards about what you did over the holidays to rest, or the weekend. So I'm very interested in that. You mentioned, that you saw our Rural on Purpose manifesto.
Mhm.
So my business, Rural on Purpose, started with a manifesto. It didn't start with a logo. It didn't start with with even a customer. We started with a manifesto. Because I'm Generation X, it had to be a manifesto. So this will explain what we're all about and what we believe. I'm going to read it to you. We are fearlessly optimistic people living in rural communities. We believe that entrepreneurship is a vehicle for change and a mindset of growth. We don't fear the future, we have faith in it. Constraints are simply catalysts for innovation. Today, we have the opportunity to transform, augment, innovate, and connect like never before in history. We are changing the course of our rural communities with our own wit, wisdom, and ingenuity. We are living rural on purpose.
Absolutely.
And we have a really beautiful poster that has that on it. I have t-shirts, and we put that out there. And I was trying to sum up what it was that I was trying to do with this community building initiative. And I had to really think about it and try and, rather than just create a statement, a mission statement and vision, values, all of those things, I thought, it makes sense to put it into something really concrete and visual and something that will resonate. And it did. It was crazy. From the minute I put the manifesto out there, people started coming to me and saying, that's how I feel. That's who I am. You just described me. What's this community? How do I get involved? How do we build? We started building this thing together. It was not something that was this, big master plan with a business plan and any of that. And it was a message that resonated with a community of people all over the world. I had people from Australia contacting me and saying, that's exactly how I feel. That's who I am. So how do we go? Where do we go from here?
That's amazing. And I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are watching right now, and they're working on building ecosystems and products, platform for well-being, and other platforms that they're making. Can you tell us, from your experience of community building, what are some of the most important things that that they need to incorporate think about when they're building a community? And it's like, how do you get started?
When they're building a community or building their business?
Well, they're building their business, but obviously they're building a community around their business as well. Like how important that is. Without a community, that platform it's just going to be a platform. There's no one who's going to be using it, right? So what are
that's a great question.
Yeah,
it's a really great question. And I think that because of what we're going through now with COVID, creating a community and focusing on your community is more important than focusing on your product. It's going to be the thing that sustains you. It's going to help you get to the other end of whatever this is, and whatever that's going to look like at the other end. It's going to be the people that you connected with, the customers, the community that you built. Social media is really important, staying connected, creating opportunities for people in your community to get together and communicate and share ideas and share solutions to problems and ask questions, and anything that you can do to facilitate community at this point in time, and it has to be online, is going to benefit you at the other end of all of this. So it was a really good question, because I would have told you that I think that it's more important than the product even.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And I know that prior to COVID that you have facilitated bringing the communities together and building out, like, for example, the co-working spaces and what that looks like. And so as you were talking about in one of your talks that I watched, that 7 out of 10 people, I think, are going to be, freelancers, right? So, and a lot of people are going to be moving to rural areas. And so now, have you moved those kind of conversation online? And what does that look like? What does the future of, let's say, co-working spaces look like with the presence of COVID and what we're seeing?
That's another really good question. We were working to help build co-working spaces we have a program, it's called a 30-day challenge, and it's a community building program where we go into a community and within 30 days, we can create an ecosystem for freelancers and remote workers with temporary co-working spaces in the downtown area. So we support the local businesses, they get extra income, and we bring everybody together, teach them about what freelancers do and what entrepreneurs are doing in their community. And we do all of that. It was a really great program. And we ran it a year ago, before all of this, with 6 communities across Canada at the same time in 30 days. And we created 89 co-working spaces in rural communities in 30 days.
That's
and
impressive.
That was without money, extra money. They didn't have to invest in space or anything. And they made the local businesses made money. Anyway, it was amazing. And we were all set in 2020 to launch this in Australia. So we were headed that way. And then, the pandemic hits and, people are not creating co-working spaces, physical spaces for people to gather. So yeah, it's a really fair question. It doesn't mean that the need isn't there it's greater. The need is greater for people to gather and share and come together. And when we're able to do that physically, it will happen, and it will be something that we will pick up again. But we have to start thinking about creating ways for people to do that online that's engaging. I mean, you're doing that. That's what this whole platform is. You're connecting with people and you're giving them an opportunity to share and ask questions and talk to each other, meet each other. We're trying to do the same thing, and it's just going to look a little bit different for a while.
Have you decided perhaps to pivot and create that same experience virtually?
You know what? Before COVID even hit, I started, it was well over a year ago, if you go back in my notes, I opened an online co-working space because I thought, hey, I'm sitting here working all day and I might as well be in a space with other people. And I purchased an online office space with all the different other desks and offices, set it all up. I had so much fun setting it up. It was fun. I put it out there and I said, who wants to join me? Like, join my online co-working space and work with me during the day. And it was crickets. It was nothing. It was like way too early, way before anybody was even thinking about doing something. It was just too weird. And sometimes innovation, the timing of innovation, Rick will probably tell you this, it's all about timing. You can have the most, amazing solution to a problem. And if you launch it at the wrong time, it's going to go nowhere. Yeah. So it was the wrong timing, but I think it's still an option. It's still a possibility. It's still something we can do, but.
Or utilizing, for example, existing platforms such as Gather. I just posted it in the chat, and that's a great platform and it's fun. I've been experimenting with it, and I thought that's interesting. But I want to explore a little bit about the reframing of the urban and rural divide and how important it is that we look at ourselves as whole human, that we're not divided, like we're not separate from nature, and how the importance of nature in our lives for our mental health and emotional well-being is so important, and how in your work that you're trying to bring those two worlds together to co-create and collaborate, and the developments that are being made. And if you could speak a little bit towards that and how you're bringing two sides together would be really great.
You gave me a lot to talk about, so you're going to have to cut me off. Like, Colin, just jump in there, say, you're done. Done.
Let her
Stop
run.
talking. There is a whole new field in psychology called eco-psychology.
Mhm.
And if you look it up, you will see all of the benefits that there are, the physical, mental health benefits to being in nature. And doctors are writing nature prescriptions now. So they're not giving you medication. A lot of times they're saying you spend 30 minutes out in the sun, out around green, around, trees and out in nature, and you're going to feel better. And there is a whole movement that way. So people are starting to recognize what, a lot of people have known for a long time who are living in rural communities, the benefits of that.
Mhm.
Now we see the urban rural divide is a really complicated topic. So it's one of those things we can talk about probably a little bit more at another time. But we're two sides of that same whole, rural and urban. We're not disconnected. We think that we're disconnected, but we need each other to survive. And that's my whole premise whenever I'm talking about rural urban connections and creating pathways back and forth that are functional, that are healthy, that allow people to move freely back and forth between rural and urban communities. And there are lots of really good reasons to support that kind of development. But we're not really, we've created this divide, but we really are two sides of the same whole. So we each balance the other out. And it's finding that connection point, finding those discussion points that are tricky. I was right before COVID hit, I was in Washington, in Spokane at a conference that was rural community builders and urban community builders. It was a foundation from that whole region, and they were all in the same room, about 300 of them, I think. And they were in the room for the first time together, sitting at tables, talking to each other about how to build capacity in their region. And it was so exciting to see that kind of conversation and to see what was developing and to see that they hadn't had the conversation before. They didn't sit at the same tables. They went to separate conferences. They went to separate events, had separate conversations. And this was really exciting. So I see lots of potential.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's about time that those kind of conversations happening, and we know that, it's not separate, and I think COVID it's made everyone realize how important, of course, nature is, and incorporating nature into our physical spaces as well. And so what that's going to look like as well, with urban cities and incorporating nature into co-working spaces and into our homes, how important it is, because we need a space to get away, a space within a space. I know I got a cue, I got to wrap it up, but I really have one more question. I really need to ask this question.
You really need to ask this question? All right, fine.
Okay,
go for it.
More. I really need to, because you're so passionate about this subject, and I know when did you realize this is your calling? And because a lot of entrepreneurs, they sometimes that voice comes in and we know, okay, this is our calling, and we kind of suppress that voice because of the 3D world and materialistic world, and we got to make money and get that paycheck, and how do we make that leap from this world of like paycheck to paycheck to really answer to our calling. So how was that for you? How did you know?
I was a teacher, high school teacher. I went the traditional education route and got my BEd, and I was teaching. I was taught for 7 years. And when I was growing up, in my generation, where I lived in a rural area, very rural area, entrepreneurship was not an option. It wasn't even, we didn't talk about it. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was or what they did. I didn't know anyone that owned their own business. It wasn't something, it was never presented as an option. Had it been presented as an option, I can't help but think that I would have recognized myself right away, and I would have chosen a different path at that very initial stage. And it wasn't until I fell into it. I was on maternity leave, and I was approached by an insurance company to teach an adult student. And I said, sure, I'll work. They were working on their high school diploma. So I was going to do that. It went so well that the insurance company said, if you open an office, I'll send you more clients.
Mhm.
So I mean, okay, I'll do it. I walk through the door, I open, I'm on maternity leave still, open an office, they send me more clients. Then another one sent me more clients. And then I had, a whole room full of clients. I had to hire somebody, and then I had to move, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew until, I had 2 locations, 26 full-time teachers. And, I was doing really well. I was business person of the year that year in Kingston. And it was walking through an open door. I recognized myself. I saw something that was working in me, and I just walked through the door. When someone presents you with an opportunity, most entrepreneurs will say yes. They will say it and figure it out as they go. And I am going to tell you that during those years, I had no idea how to be an entrepreneur except for Rick Spence. Rick Spence, if you don't know this, but Rick Spence here in the room, you have to, we got to get to him. Rick Spence was the editor of Profit Magazine. I was waiting in line for Profit Magazine every single issue that came out. I had every single copy. I still have them. And I read it cover to cover, and I learned how to be an entrepreneur from Rick Spence. And I am honored to be here today, on the same panel with him. I'm his biggest fangirl.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you so much.
Nice. Well, Mary, thank you for that conversation. I do know in chat, Brenda had asked, love the manifesto. Where can I find a copy? So Mary, if you can actually put in chat here to everybody, not just to the panelists here, a link to that would be awesome, so that Brenda and everybody else can find that. I'm going to now turn it over to, we have 4 podcasters here that are all itching to ask questions. That's what we do. So we gave the non-podcasters their time there. So Mary and Maryam, thank you so much for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Reza to have a conversation with Jessica to learn about all the amazing things that she's done and the whirlwind that was 2020 and all the things that she accomplished last year. So Reza, my friend, take it away.
Colin, if non-podcasters take that much time, I need more time as a podcaster. We need a whole lot of stuff to talk about. Nice meeting you, Jessica. Thank you for being on our show. I'm going to dive right into everything you're doing. Tell us about Ignited Entrepreneurs podcast and what you guys do there. Tell us about what you are doing as a coach and the stuff there. And NLP, what does that stand for? A lot of us may not know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Reza. I'm really excited to be here. And thank you, Colin, for inviting me. So 2020 has been, for me, it's been amazing, right? I get that not everybody can say that, but I got really lucky. So the beginning of January last year, I was starting to pivot my coaching business. So I was working with just regular people and helping them like as a life coach. And then all of a sudden I started to realize that I really like working with entrepreneurs. They're kind of more my people, right? We have the same mindset, the way of looking at the world, and I really wanted to focus. And so I thought, well, okay, so how do I figure out how to create a program for entrepreneurs? Oh, I know, ask them, right? So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to put something out into Facebook, and I'm going to just offer an opportunity to have these conversations with successful entrepreneurs and just try to backwards engineer, figure out what that gap is, where I could fill that gap for people. And it was really interesting. I had a ton of responses, and somebody said to me, yes, but what is this for? Is this for a podcast? And I think I thought on that for about 30 seconds, and I went, yeah, it is. And I just went, okay, I guess I'm going to host a podcast. And it was just amazing. And again, then of course, then that whole like, oh, wow, okay, what did I just agree to? What am I doing? What have I gotten myself into kicks in, right? And luckily, one of the people that said yes, she kind of pushed me. She was so excited about the idea that she contacted me. She was like the first one. And kind of pushed me towards this thing that I had said yes to. And it was awesome because I was kind of stepping back a little bit at the time thinking, okay, I need to figure this all out. I don't know how to do this. And she was like, let's just do it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And, you know, to this day, she is the one episode that has the most listens, which is really interesting to me. So, you know, I think that that fire, that energy, that everything that was coming through in that moment must have come through in that episode, right? So, yeah. And for me, what I found was one of the things that Mary mentioned that I find so interesting, and even Colin, when you were talking about what this show is for you, is that community, right? Like I had no idea when I decided to do this, because Reza, you're a podcaster. When you have that conversation with somebody, it's one-on-one. So you kind of forget that other people are listening eventually,
Yes.
right? And you forget that you're kind of having this community that you're creating. So once I had recorded a whole bunch of my episodes, I did a little thing in July where I put together a collage of all of the people that I'd had the pleasure of interviewing. Turned out by July, I had interviewed and published, I think, 43 podcasts.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
crazy. It was crazy,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And I saw this collage that I'd created with all these amazing faces that I didn't know. I didn't know most of them before making this decision. I like what Mary said about stepping through an open door. I feel like that's what I did. I just didn't know the door was there, right? But once I stepped through, it's like it just opened up before me. And
I'm gonna add some comments here before you add stuff, because it's just super interesting to me. Number one, I love, Jessica, how you opened up with you had a great year. This is one of those years, those of us, those few people who are doing great, they're a little bit shy to actually tell about it. I'm guilty of that, because everybody else is going through struggle. We are holding back from our achievements, which is something that I feel like we need to be doing more of it, because it's great news. We've had a lot of bad news out there. It's great to be proud of yourself. You're doing a great job despite the pandemic, and I'm sure you're very grateful for what's coming towards you. So that's great to celebrate. So I'm very happy to see that. That's amazing. Number two, what you shared about podcasts, I went through the same thing. I just did a marathon of networking before launching my company, and I met a guy who came to me and said, let's start a podcast. And I didn't even have intention to start a podcast, but I was open to the idea, and I was like, why not? Sure, let's think about it. And 30, 40 episodes later, I look back, that was a source of meeting people, talking to existing connection, deepening some relationships. Some people reach out to you and say, hey, I listened to that. That was super interesting. I found you through your podcast, and now I'm adding you to LinkedIn. It's that community and putting yourself out there. And you've touched on that. So that's amazing. I'll let you go and continue with your story. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. You know, and it's funny because I have actually met you in person before at a Voice Story event, right? And I think
yes,
yeah.
I remember that.
And I think you were really close to the end. Yeah, and I think you were really close to the end of your 100 days or 100 events in 100 days. So you get it. You get the whole community thing and the networking and just the power behind that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what podcasting has done for me. So, you know, from a personal point of view, I have a full-time job, and I'm an empty nester, and I'm single.
Okay.
So this podcast, I have to say, like, I'm getting chills thinking about it. I really feel like it is what saved me from the disaster 2020 could have been for me, right? That I needed that community. I needed to create that for myself, and it came to me at the right time. I honestly am not sure that my mental state would have been as good had I not found this, right? So
that's inspiring just to hear.
Yeah. You know, and another thing that Mary mentioned was she's talking about these co-work spaces. That's also something that I've just done for myself. Is I'm sitting at a co-work space because I need that extra level of community, right? Being able to be a part of something. So I work in an office, I come home to my house, and then at least I have something else that I can go out and do. and be part of this other physical community. And it's safe because all the precautions are taken. We got the social distancing, but it gives me that extra level of feeling like I'm part of something when we're being so, like, there's this, it's almost, you have to apologize for wanting connection with people, right? And so it's great that there are these spaces where we can do that and still be safe and still be following protocol and yet still feel like you're part of something.
My main takeaway, Jessica, is that there are a lot of people who think if they start a show or if they start a podcast, it's about viewership. And if I'm not going to get a million views, I'm failing. It's nothing but like, it's not about the amount of people who are viewing your podcast. It's about you having a community. What is it that if we have a room filled with people to watch your conference, and if there are 20 people watching your presentation, it feels like an achievement. But if we have 20 views on your podcast, it doesn't. I don't get that part. You have a community, even if nobody watches your podcast and you're talking to someone and interviewing, that by itself is a deepening of a relationship, and it builds on that. It's just bizarre to me that everybody's trying to get popular off of these. There are other achievements, other values from doing a podcast or doing content or being on these Zoom calls.
Absolutely. For me, it really is all about the joy. So I did an exercise. So you asked me about NLP. So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and I am a certified practitioner. I did that a couple of years ago. And one of the techniques or the exercises that we do in that is called a values elicitation. And what that is you take a goal that you have or a part of your life, and you do a set of questions over and over and over. And it's, other people call it a 7 levels deep exercise.
Yes.
So some people might be familiar with that. But what it does is it dives you down to the deeper reason for why you do what you do. And when I did that for myself, for my business, the values that came up were joy and freedom. And so for me, sitting here talking to you right now is joy, right? This is my idea of a good time, right? So, and that's what my podcast is. And so I now use that filter of joy as my measure of success. If I'm having joy in my life, I'm not worried about the external successes. I'm more worried about that value. And for me, when I'm feeling joy, I'm feeling success. So whether somebody else decides to listen to that episode or not is almost irrelevant to me, because when I'm having that conversation with that person, that's all that really matters to me. So,
and that joy comes naturally. That joy, when you have it, you feel it, that comes, and everybody else feels the same thing. You can tell from their voice, and then you listen to the podcast, you see this person has joy in what they're doing and they're bringing value. So this is building on that platform. So kudos to you for putting yourself out there. I'm looking back. I want to know if you have any stories out of your podcast. I'm looking back, and I have a co-host. So the good thing is I bring some of the guests from my side, and he brings some from his side, and we get to meet each other's network. That's one cool thing about it. We've also done some without any guests, and we interview each other. But we've met people, or we deepen relationships through the podcast, that it just goes to places that we didn't expect. For example, we started growing a little on the podcast. We put out this description for a volunteer on Facebook, and we interviewed 4 people that wanted to join the podcast and volunteer and do some editing and help us out, and in return the resume built for them, and as experience added to their resume. And the person ended up to work at OVU, and he's coming every day to the office and doing a lot of stuff together. And it goes to ways that you don't expect it. And you think the podcast is about getting popular views all over North America, and then it just comes with different ways of bringing you value that you didn't expect. I wonder if you have stories on that.
Yeah, for me, it really is those connections that I've made with my guests. I've had, I see them as my community now, right? And I've actually taken that to deeper levels where now we're collaborating on things. So, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like I've found my people, these are my people. And what's really cool is that I interview somebody, and I always say, do you know somebody that would be interested in being on the show? And it creates this ripple of just amazing people that are coming into my life. And, you know, we all talk about that. You are the average of the 5 people you hang out with. For me, I feel like I've completely up-leveled that circle of influence through the people that I've met, right?
That's amazing.
That's, for me, that's what I love so much about this opportunity. That
Okay, Jessica, I'm going to do rapid questions before we wrap this this section up. Rapid question number 1. First of all, how many episodes are you in your podcast?
I have published to date 85 episodes. 78 of those are interviews. 7 of them are me doing my little mini casts. I have recorded another 10, but I haven't published them yet.
Okay. Out of the 7, that's just you. What's your favorite topic of those 7 that you discussed?
Well, probably the most recent one that I did, which was how podcasting changed my life.
Nice.
Yeah.
And out of the 75 interviews, what's the highlight? What's one highlight that comes to your mind, the interesting story or interesting event that happened there?
Okay, so I had one lady on, her name is Chandra Lynn. She's amazing. And we connected on a deeper level because it turns out that we've taken the same coaching training. We're both NLP practice. Like, we just geeked out for an hour.
What's the episode number?
I have no idea.
Okay. We'll go look into it. Okay. And who are you looking for as a next guest? What's the things that you're looking for?
You know, I just love good stories and good energy. I need energy. Like, because my podcast is very casual, it's really just a chat, very much like this. I need somebody that brings a good energy and is willing to be vulnerable and share with me.
Amazing. Definitely we'll either share your link to the podcast on our Facebook and Eventbrite, or if we don't have it, then you can help us get that link and share it with our community. The people who are watching, I'm sure there are at least a few of them who are qualified to be on your podcast. So hopefully they'll reach out to you and we'll hear from them on one of your episodes. I'm going to wrap it up. What keeps you up at night, Jessica?
Honestly, it's just making sure that I get everything done, because I'm still a one-person solopreneur. So for me, it's just that, like, making sure that I get them all done so that I can continue to honor my guests. That's probably the one thing.
It's the theme of the whole entrepreneurship. We have tasks that are longer than any books, and we don't know where to start checking them off. Thank you for being on the show. I'm going to hand it off to Colin to continue with the show, and I can't wait to hear from Rick as well.
Yeah, amazing. Jessica, your energy, it's infectious here. I think you may find a couple of people on this particular show that have a little bit of energy there and some vulnerability. I'm just saying, just put it out there. There's a couple of good people amongst here that we have. Absolutely love your story there. Same for me in the podcasting space. It was about building community there in that sport and golf entrepreneurship and innovation space. And it is amazing the people that you meet. And same with me. I've done over 90 episodes. I have 90 mentors. In some cases, I have like a dozen new, awesome, really good friends now that you have. And it is amazing what you do. And people that start for the wrong reason, and Rick will talk about this as far as the why in entrepreneurship, that purpose and the culture that's wrapped around that. If you start as a podcaster to think you're going to be the next Joe Rogan with 1 million views and monetize that, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, right? It's like starting a band in your garage, right? If you think you're going to be the next, going to age myself, but saying you're the next U2 or whoever that band is, you're that's at the very top of the pyramid, right? That 0.1%, and everybody else, you got to do it because you love it. And there's other things. It's a labor
of love for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I did not see any questions in chat. Our attendees are very shy today.
We do have Enda saying, I'm curious that co-working space that Jessica working in and how she chose one she did.
Oh yeah, well, so where I am right now is I'm sitting at the Fountainhead networking space. And actually I was approached, the lady who runs it, Erin, approached me, and when they were opening it up, it's about 10 minutes from my home, which is perfect. And even as soon as I walked in the door, I felt that community that I was looking for. It's family owned. They've created an amazing space here, and I absolutely highly recommend it. It's an amazing
I'll
space.
add to that. I've been there and I quite like their setup for podcasting and content creation. They've got a whole room for podcasting. They got a whole room for content creation. It's amazing for those of us who are in that space, creative content, and I add that as well.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Nice. Good stuff. Miriam, did you have any questions you want to jump in? You got anything you want to ask Jessica?
I do have a lot of questions, but I think, I'm going to, I would love to hear your conversation with Rick. So I'm just going to ask the questions in the chat.
There we go. Okay, that's true. We do have that. There is that next level under the surface, which is a nice segue to one comment I was going to make too in podcasting. Reza mentioned this is you may look at the numbers and the downloads or, get anxious about that. Oh, no one's listening. But there, especially with social media, it's like I've heard this one before. It's not a new one that, you see the duck on the pond and you don't see the water really moving, but those feet underneath everything that's going on, there's so much water moving and we don't see 99% of what's actually going on until we find out that there's all these people that connect with us that you don't hear about that. And there's a lot going on there, kind of underneath the water with that iceberg that you're creating there. So take heart to that, and you find out at certain times, whether it's, I had some guy tell me something that we had worked on years ago, that he loved what we had done so much that it's the screensaver for his laptop for the last 6 years. It's like stuff like that. It's like, that's amazing, right? That image, but you just don't know that type of stuff. So Jessica and Reza, I want to thank you for that conversation. If we have a couple minutes at the end, we can circle back for a couple more questions, but yeah, let me now turn it over to my friend Rick Spence, who I am very excited to hear how he is doing. But before we ask about the here and now, Rick, welcome to the show. And perhaps you wear so many different hats. Maybe you can distill it down and tell the people what you have done and what kind of gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you excited in the entrepreneurship and innovation space.
Sure. Thank you, Colin. It's great to be here. And thanks so much, Mary and Jessica, for your stories. Really interesting stuff. I love hearing about it. I've been collecting entrepreneur stories for a very long time, as Colin, you've mentioned about 47 times already. My background is a print journalist. I was the editor of a magazine called Profit, the magazine for Canadian entrepreneurs. My printer has decided to start cleaning itself. Hope you can't hear that. I was editor and then publisher of Profit magazine, which was published by Rogers, a national magazine about entrepreneurs. It was mostly the only one in the country. Other people would start one and then find out how marginal the magazine business was, and then that would fold, and then 2 years later someone would start another one. But we had 100,000 subscribers across the country, and we were really getting at the heart of the entrepreneurship revolution that began in Canada in the 1980s, picked up speed in the 90s, fell on its face in 2000, and then has picked up and really driven the Canadian economy and the global economy ever since. Now, the sad thing about magazine journalism is it's not really a sustainable model anymore. I left Profit back in the 2000s, and it died about 5 or 6 years later. Its big brother magazine, Canadian Business, died 2 years later. It had a little brother magazine that also died. So it's been a bloodbath for professional journalism about entrepreneurship. But podcasting and blogging and YouTube have really taken over so that we can, share these stories still and meet the entrepreneurs that are doing great things. So I urge everyone to get as much information as they can about entrepreneurs, because every one of them has something to teach you and something that will inspire you.
Nice. Now, Rick, you're the one who put it out there, so I don't feel I'm aging you here by saying this, but you've been involved in the entrepreneurship space for over 4 decades now, and you've seen the
3 decades in a teeny tiny bit.
There we go, and a teeny tiny bit. Well, you're aging yourself even more, so that's on you, my friend. So you've been through it all, the ups and downs. You've actually the 2008 recession, the .com bubble bursting there in 2000, and
I was in Silicon Valley on a trade mission for the city of Toronto when when Silicon Valley stumbled in the year 2000. And suddenly people were saying, wait a minute, the market just went down 10% today, and everyone was panicking. And we thought, oh, this happens all the time in Canada. What's the problem?
That's right. It's a natural thing. So with that, it's like the saying of the more things change, the more they stay the same. You've seen all different sectors come and go, become frothy, and then kind of fall off. Of your over 4 decades in entrepreneurship, do you see as those kind of those universal characteristics that make for a successful, not a serial entrepreneur, but for a successful entrepreneur over time that endures?
Sure. So many of them. A sense of confidence is so important. A good work ethic that says, "Hey, I'm working through the holidays, even if no one else is in my place." I think the most important thing is to have an opportunistic mindset. Being opportunistic, there are both good and bad associations with that word, and I think that's okay. Being opportunistic means you are looking for opportunities, but you're not looking for opportunities to take anything away from people. The ideal entrepreneur is creating new value. So if I'm going to open up a new shoe store or supermarket in an area, I'm only going to take business away from other people if I do it better than the people who are there. And our economy depends on people consistently innovating and doing better than the people before them. And then the other companies, the competitors, see what you're doing, and then hopefully that gets their competitive juices flowing. They start innovating. They put in a new fresh pizza oven, and suddenly everyone is better off for the competition between these two entrepreneurs. And when you have that opportunistic mindset and say, how can this be done better, then the industry you're in almost doesn't matter. You can succeed in any industry if you see, okay, there's a certain way of doing things, but I think it can be done better. And you might do that because you have some expertise in the field. You might be an engineer and see an opportunity to rejig an entire system, or you might see it from a customer level. That's why entrepreneurship is such an accessible discipline. You can see it as a customer and say, you know what, I think I would, if I opened a store like this, I'd be friendlier. I'd have a better returns policy. I might let people rent stuff out over the weekend. And suddenly you have a viable business model.
No, I love that. And using the term opportunistic, I can get that out, opportunistic in a positive sense. And that ties in very nicely what Mary was talking about earlier there about timing. And I just saw a TEDx video a couple of days ago. I forget who the venture capitalist was talking about this. And he had, of all the hundreds and hundreds of companies that he's been involved with, he's invested in, and they used a rating system of the five points of entrepreneurship, whether it's your idea, your team, your execution ability, and also timing. And they found that sort of success, timing was one of the biggest things. And that doesn't tie into necessarily luck. I think, Rick, you can speak to this, is about being able, having that experience and falling back and pulling back on your experience and pulling in all those other elements from other industries, other sectors, and then creating new value through that. So perhaps you could share an example or two of what you've seen over the years that really stand out of people that you've worked with or directly that have kind of seen around the corner there to see opportunities and new value and have managed to execute on those.
Sure. Probably my favorite Canadian entrepreneur success story is a guy named Bruce Poon-Tip, who runs G Adventures, which is an adventure travel company here in Toronto. He's from Calgary. And as a young guy, he loved to travel. He loved to travel rough. And he thought everyone should get out there and get away from the big cities, get into the countryside and meet real people. Mary, you should meet. You should meet Bruce. So he decided to start providing that kind of a tour because he realized that a lot of people didn't want to go out and create their own journey from small town to small town in Cambodia tours. And so he started leading them, I think in Peru, and in Machu Picchu was the first one. And quickly turned it into the largest adventure travel company in the world. I used my podcast, because I do a podcast for Startup Canada, which is the one Colin, that you were on. I used my podcast to catch up with Bruce last month. And I asked him, are you still getting offers from people to buy your company like every week? Because the big company's been trying to buy his company now for years. And he says, oh yeah, I got like 3 today. He said, I don't even open the email anymore. So, this was started by a young man who got fired from McDonald's for not fitting in. And so Bruce, and he had basically no outside capital. He just put this thing together, and then he created a community among people all over the world who enjoyed traveling rough and learning about authentic cultures and local cultures. And so this is a timeless opportunity, and it was available to anybody. But he went in there and did it really well and took it away from the big players.
Nice. So he obviously had the insights, he had the experience, he had the confidence then to say, hey, I can do this. So I can go off in 5 different tangents here with the conversation just through your depth of knowledge in the entrepreneurship space here. But Rick, you did touch on the podcast with Startup Canada that you host. Let's talk about this a little bit, because of course, as an entrepreneur, no matter what you're doing, a product.
Oh, my favorite guest. Yeah. It was you. Yeah.
That was what I was asking, but thank you. That's very kind of you. You're lying, but I'll take that anyway. So I want to ask you this: with entrepreneurs out there, whether they're contemplating bringing to market or have an idea for a product or a service or experience, it's about customer validation and finding out there's a market. So people ask me, like, how did Startup Canada start? So you were there the early days. You did the early cross Canada tour. And like very quickly in a minute or two, could you tell us about how Startup Canada started more than 10 years ago and what you and Victoria and others did to validate that there was something there and how you can position that to add as much value as you have?
Sure. I think it's actually a good example of how a startup, I think, should be done. And the idea of creating a national organization for startup entrepreneurs is, it's not everyone's idea of a bountiful opportunity, but Victoria and Cyprian, 2 29-year-olds from Ontario, decided to give it a shot. And they organized a tour across Canada, and they went and they found some sponsors to pay for it, but they did all the heavy lifting, just dragging all kinds of luggage around Canada over a period of, it was March to September. So it went over a period of 6 months. They visited almost 40 communities. Like, they didn't just go to Vancouver. They went to Prince George. They didn't just go to Calgary and Edmonton. They went to Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, and they did it right. And they went and they listened. And they said, what are you looking for in an entrepreneurial organization? What are the gaps in this ecosystem? And I think every entrepreneur should do that before they start their business or while they're starting the business, one or the other. You got to go to your customers, your prospects, and say, what are you trying to do? What do you need? What are the gaps that you see? How can we help you? And that's what Startup Canada did. And that's how we got an idea for what an appropriate mandate would be and what an appropriate structure would be. We saw the need for startup communities such as Startup Vancouver to be our feet on the street, so that we would have a local presence in as many communities as possible, as well as a national sounding board. And that, again, that's been very difficult to pull off. It's still a labor of love for the people running Startup Canada now, but I think they did it right.
Nice. So quickly, we're almost at the top of the hour. So one more question to expand on that. So before you left to hit the road in March, and then 6 months later, of course, as entrepreneurs, you have your assumptions, these questions, things you think need to get answered, but you literally got out of the building across the country to listen and ask questions and to validate this. So hopefully you can provide 1 or 2 things here. So those assumptions you made in March as compared to what you learned over the course of 6 months in September and October, what then changed or was refined, or things did you decide not to do as then you carried Startup Canada, you launched Startup Canada after that?
Well, we found out that nobody was dying for a national rallying voice for entrepreneurs. It wasn't something they could immediately get their heads around. They said, I don't even know who to talk to in my own community. I know there's people with capital. I don't know how to find them, and they're hard to find. And the advisor that I have doesn't know either. And so we found out that the immediate need was for organizations to help be the sort of honest broker in town and help connect investors to entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs to bankers and insurance agents, entrepreneurs to each other. And that's what the startup communities do. So startup communities grew directly out of going to all those communities and finding out that every community had just about everything they needed, but nobody was communicating with each other. And to be that honest broker in between, the commonality that links to everybody without fear or favor, and does it not for a fee, but because they want to build the community. That was the sweet spot that Startup Canada, thanks to startup community leaders like you, Colin, that's the opportunity that we've exploited the most over the years.
Got it. Well, it's nice to know that if you didn't take that on the road and revealed that the community connectivity was the thing that people needed and wanted most, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So thank you for going on that cross Canada tour, Rick. Now here we are.
So much fun.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we could continue all these conversations easily for another hour. I can feel the energy building here, but to be respectful and try to keep within that half-hour time frame that we do. We're going to wrap it up for today. So Rick, hey, I want to thank you so much for this. Maryam, I want you to end the show today, but before you do, I think I made a threat or a promise, depends on how you look at that I need to thank some people for making a donation today to jack.org. And the way I do that goes a little something like this. Nice donation by you. Jack.org says, thank you. You are awesome. Brenda Benham, Marvin Irwin, and Bryce Wade. That was a mouthful. Nice donations by you. There we go. Maryam.
I have to say thank you, Rick, for that cross-country tour that then led to Colin, to then led to meet us, then to led to this show. It's been a phenomenal journey all along, and then we all do it for this singing. You know it, Colin.
I think Reza, you should wrap it up today. I'll do it next time. You're on a roll.
No. It's your turn. It's your turn.
Oh, you two are being so Canadian. I'm trying to decide. Okay,
So
Maryam, do it.
well, we're going to do this. All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. Rick, Mary, Jessica, and Reza, and of course, Colin. It was a wonderful show, and we look forward to another engaging, fun conversation with you next Tuesday at 12. So join us, and you can find all the information on Facebook and our Instagram channel, and definitely subscribe to our YouTube. Thank you so much, and see you next week.
Have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.
Right.
See you next
Thank
week.
you.
Bye.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye now.